What's up, everybody? Well, I'm making kind of an unexpected video. It's a long story as to how I got an opportunity, but I just take them when I can get them. Well, I wish I could be unboxing what will hopefully be my last package for a while, when things take forever to come in and, 10 times longer than they should to come in because the seller schedules a vacation. It discourages you to buy anything for a while at least. And I'm liking how my hair is growing out a little bit. I wish I could just leave it grown out. But one thing I'd like to update on is, remember the little boy who was anchoring down the balloon? He's like a little craft doll with eyes that open and close. Well, I changed the outfit for the girl to something that, oh man, John had to have his glasses messed up. See this, I'm gonna have to find somewhere to put him, but he's gonna be more protected from other dolls because this is not working. So there's John on Peter Pan, and then here is a girl, a craft doll girl that I had to buy to get that white shirt. And I think this is much nicer for her than this silly yellow dress. And let's see, this little boy, which I could paint the back of his head, which is coming off, but I told you I had hemmed his pants in one of my other videos. And what I've done since then is, because he did not have any shoes that would fit, he didn't have any shoes. I couldn't find any shoes that worked with him. I literally made some by hand, and it just never ceases to amaze me, what I can do when I decide to. Never ceases to amaze me, and how necessity is the mother of invention, So I not only hemmed his pants, the idiots who sold this doll to me thought that if you cover his bare feet, you just cut the pants, leave them unhemmed, and leave them long enough to cover the bare feet, then it didn't really matter whether or not he had shoes. If his bare feet were covered, then it was just like if he had shoes under there. Well, I decided that, rather than try to buy some kind of shoes that would fit, I decided to literally construct by hand. I wish I'd started doing this years ago. A pair of Converse Chuck Taylor clones made out of felt, which ended up looking more like my slippers. I used to have a pair of slippers that were like real soft and fleece. And it was around the time when I was obsessed with those shoes, because I guess in my mind I saw them as little boy shoes, so to speak, because they were just a popular choice for little boys in movies, dating all the way back to little boys and cartoon boys, dating all the way back to when they first started being popular to the current day, on shows where they want to have a boy wearing shoes that are easily recognized as boy shoes, but they're not, they don't have a name brand specified, though we all know what name brand they usually are. So they're generic, but then they're also recognizable as Converse. So I made a pair of Converse, and it's amazing how just with a few minutes, 4 pieces of felt, 2 of them red, 1 of them white, and the soles are orange. 4 pieces of felt for each shoe came together in such a way. And now if I did it more often, I'd probably get better at it. You know, practice would improve it. And so, you know, I could change it, you know, change the pattern to make this black or blue instead of red. But, you know, I mean, there you have it, a pair of Converse shoes. They may be ugly, but you can still tell that they're shoes. And it covers his bare feet. And so I just drew basically like the big wraparound piece is the biggest piece, and it's like a big wide trapezoid. And I made 2 of them identical, you know, the size of like the wraparound. And I drew like the sole of his foot, like an ellipse or an oval on a piece of cardboard, which I cut out 2 of those, a mirror image, and I made them like an insert for the shoe to hold the shape. And so then I made like the white trimming, which could have probably been done a little better, but I did a pretty good job. And that contains the little rubber tip. I guess you could make a shoe without one if you wanted to, you know, by just not having that bulge in the middle. But that's the trim around the shoe, and it goes around the soles, which are made out of, they could be brown, yellow, orange, etc. Just so the soles are a different color than the rest of the shoe. And you just sew those things together with white thread. And then when you're finished, oh, you make the tongue, which is like that. It attaches inside the toe piece, you know, which is part of the white strip. And so you'll have a tongue, and you'll have like the wraparound piece sewn all the way around. And when you put the doll's foot in it with the insert to hold the shape, like he's stepping on it, and it also kind of elongates, you know, the foot a little bit, makes it not quite so small and girly. And it gives him a little bit of height, you know, to have the cardboard in there. Once you're finished, you know, you have a little boy wearing red Converse shoes. And I sewed where the laces would be. I took a white piece of thread and just sewed it together, you know. And the pants hide the fact that there isn't like a bow tie, you know, there isn't like a tie on it. So there it is, a little boy in some sort of Converse shoes. And he looks a lot neater, you know, than what I was sold. And I'm gonna call him Pugsley Adams, you know, just because I have a Wednesday Adams doll from a year ago. And that's about how little faith I have that there would be anything, you know, somewhat equivalent to Pugsley Adams in the doll world, you know, because as you know, he's the kind of character that kind of gets sidelined or omitted in favor of Wednesday, you know, and whatever girl they can make into a doll, it's like they make the girl and the brother is just non-existent in that world. And so that's my Pugsley Adam doll. I'm calling him that, like I said, because it's just, he may not look exactly like Pugsley, but it's the name that makes the most sense, you know, given his appearance and approximate size. And I just like to name dolls things that I'm gonna remember, you know, more easily, because of some association, a mental association that I have, and some emotion that I'm feeling about it. And I find that a lot of times, when I find out that an actor or, you know, famous boy somewhere, his voice is changing, it doesn't matter if it's the character or the actor behind him, which, I mean, inevitably that always happens. I mean, it doesn't matter, you know, what age the character starts off as being, you know. I mean, he could start off as a 2-year-old in real life and in the show, and if they use a real little boy, unlike on Rugrats, well, within about 10 to 15 years, there will come a day when his voice will change, you know? Like those kids on Honey, I Blew Up the Kid. I mean, if they would have stayed in the spotlight or, you know, stayed well known, you know, they were actually twin boys. I think their names are like Josh and Daniel Shalakar or something like that, because I used to memorize the names of these actors. And so I think that, you know, obviously, let's say the movie was from around 91. So let's say they were just born around 89, 90-ish. So I'm sure in the early aughts, you know, by some point, their voices were changing. Maybe one ahead of the other, because that's how funny puberty is. I mean, you can have identical twin boys, and there will be slightly off in their timing. You know, one will get the voice changed ahead of the other. So it's not just genetics. And so, yeah, I mean, I'm sure at some point their voices broke, as it's called, and I would have been jealous or envious of them. Had I really known about it, probably, yeah, because I was in high school or college. And so, yeah, I'd have been envious because they were younger than me and going through something I should have been going through ahead of them. I were born male. But, so yeah, something about a boy, you know, in a cartoon. That's why I'm obsessed with these boy dolls and making them, you know, when they don't exist. I just find some way to make them. And what I enjoy doing is there's just something about a character and or an actor going through puberty that just makes me want to immortalize him somehow as in little boy form. You know, I just wish that as a consolation for the fact that insert child actor or whatever, you know, consolation for the fact that their voice is changing and mine never will, it's like I just have this subconscious desire to create, you know, some sort of a doll that whether or not it looks like him very much, I could still name it him, you know, like Billy, you know, for Billy Gilman, I guess. You know, just give it a name, you know, that makes me feel like I can have some sort of physical representation of what he was as a little boy. You know, even though that looks nothing like the Pugsley Adams in the movie, you know, the fact that his actor's voice is changing, you know, since Latino boys tend to be early bloomers. And that's what he is in real life. He was a 12-year-old Latino boy who is now in his teens. And now he's taller than Wednesday. And so, yeah, I call him Pugsley. And I put him some Converse, which I have a feeling those shoes will become a lot less popular, you know, as they're the official shoe of the libtard left. You know, it's a shame they had to destroy something, just like always. You know, the liberals always destroy everything with the association with the gays, and, you know, nothing can ever be just all American little boys. It has to be associated with the gays and the wannabe boys and the, you know, the lesbians and the butch women, and you know what I'm saying. I mean, that's what attracts such people to those things, you know. But unfortunately, Converse Chuck Taylors, you know, instead of just being, because I mean, it used to be once upon a time, and that's why I was freaking obsessed with them, beginning at age 10. So much that I even had slippers that looked like them, and they were blue. But it used to be that those shoes are just a symbol of little boy, along with striped polo shirts. I mean, when you drew a character that had short hair, was flat-chested, wore a striped shirt, and usually red, but occasionally black or blue Converse, I mean, that character was a little boy. Period. The end. Regardless of who did his voice, he was a little boy. because of those features. I mean, those were as understood to be little boy things as, pigtails and bows and Mary Janes and cute sailor-like dresses were understood to be little girl things. You know what I'm saying? Like, they distinguished little boys from adult men who were in more business-like attire. And, little girls were distinguished from women in high heels and pearls. So, but everything, just like everything else, when something is associated with little boys, it always has to be appropriated, with the community, with tomboy girls, and with the community of people who, for different reasons, are obsessed with little boys and all things that pertain to them. Gay men are obsessed with them in the way that they're attracted to them, which is disgustingly enough. And lesbians and butch women are obsessed with little boys, as I've stated before, because they make it possible. I've talked about this, how, the best thing about little boys is they make it impossible to truly enforce Deuteronomy 22.5 for women. You know what I'm saying? It's funny how, you could theoretically ban the production of, or the sale of big women's clothing and size 13 and above high heels and, big things that men would need to impersonate women, so to speak. And you could have them exclusive to clothing stores where you have to prove that you're a genetic female. You know what I'm saying? You have to prove with your driver's license that you're genetically female before they'll allow you to try on these big women's dresses. And so you could, theoretically ban, men from wearing women's clothing, and that'd be awesome. Male to female cross-dressing is largely prohibited by the lack of large women's clothing, so to speak. Like, they don't have as much access to women's stuff that fits them as we have to men's stuff that fits us. And it is largely because of little boys and the existence thereof. The fact that all men have to go through a time in their life when they're my height and shorter, and when their voices are as high as mine, which is why I'm so friggin' fascinated and obsessed with the voice change in every little boy that has ever gone through it, whether in my family, my classmates, or, famous celebrity boys and so on. I'm just so fascinated with it because I see that as the biggest distinguishing thing between men and women. A bridge that I wish I could close in myself. Which is why in my teens I became obsessed with, trying to stretch my vocal cords when I was alone. And, it ended up making me sound like I have a 365-day cold when I only get one per year now that I'm an adult. So yeah, it broke my voice, so to speak, but not in a way that made it deepen into a man's voice, just in a way that made it unstable as a woman's voice, so that I'm neither here nor there. I neither have a smooth, beautiful, flute-like female voice, like I may once have had as a little girl, nor do I have a strong, booming baritone or bass male voice. You know what I'm saying? I'm not a strong man, but then I'm also not quite a delicate lady anymore. And that's the other thing I did, was I put a dress on Tinkerbell. I had bought some tulle, T-U-L-L-E, from Walmart, because she was only wearing the swimsuit part. And I took out her hair tie because it was breaking or deteriorating in her hair, and I put a yellow one, which you can't see because it blends with her blonde hair. I put a yellow hair tie, the cloth kind that stretch. And so I fixed up Tinkerbell, gave her some TLC, And I literally constructed by hand some Converse shoes for who I'm going to call Pugsley for now, since I can't think of a better name that I can remember. See, that's what's important, is me remembering it, not so much it fitting the doll's personality. So yeah, and then there's John Darling. But yeah, it's like every time a boy goes through the voice change, or I know that he has, I mean, obviously, you know, just about every boy does at some point. But it just makes me wish I could have like a 3D replica of him in his little boy form. So that it's like I can't, it's kind of like symbolic of I can't make him stay little forever, but I could have a non-talking doll of him that will always look like he should have a child's voice. You know what I'm saying? I couldn't make Billy Gilman stay little like the One Voice CD, although he didn't really change that much, let's be honest. But I could just name a blonde, blue-eyed teenage boy doll Billy, you know, even though he's not Billy Gilman, he just a blonde boy named Billy, and it would feel, you know, one and the same, like, you know, him still sounding like those CDs that I have, you know, way back in around the year 2000. So anyway, and I can have a Justin Bieber doll, you know, and a Cody Simpson doll, and although they don't sing, you know, it just feels like I'm immortalizing, so to speak, the image of those kids as little boys, however creepy that is. I don't care how creepy it is, because I don't do anything to anyone. But yeah, the lesbian, see, the gay male obsession with little boys is creepy, you know, because it's like they're often attracted to little boys. Whereas the lesbian or F to M association with little boys, I guess, could be equally creepy, but, you know, we don't do anything. We don't have a tool, so to speak, to put it bluntly. But we have an obsession about becoming, you know, a little boy, because we can't become a true man. You know what I'm saying? We can't become a strong, manly McMuscle, you know, 6 foot tall, deep voiced man, you know what I'm saying, who is a father and grows a big beard and what have you. And so we have this obsession with like prepubescent or young adolescent boys that haven't quite finished their voice change, because for us to pass, that's almost what we would have to pretend to be. You know what I'm saying? I mean, that's kind of like when our puberty stops, right as their puberty is getting started. You know what I'm saying? It's kind of weird timing like that. Like the girls are like finishing puberty right as the boys are getting into it. And there's very little overlap. You know, there's maybe 1 or 2 years when most children are in some stage of puberty, regardless of gender. And that's roughly about 6th or 7th grade, which is why I'm obsessed with that time in my life when I was about 13. Because it's kind of like when the girls are getting out of puberty and the boys are getting into it. And, you know, lots to unpack psychologically. But I just have a feeling that these shoes will become a lot less popular, and it will make things outdated, you know, such as Doug Funny, such as The Gerbert Show, such as, you know, pretty much all these shows, Lars on Rocket Power, all these shows wherein, you know, the classic red or black Converse shoe was what said this character is a little boy, whether he seems like one or not. But I just hate it, you know, the fact that, I mean, on the one hand, I like it, you know, the fact that women are allowed to wear and do such things. But on the other hand, I hate it because once it becomes associated with lesbians, you know, that wish they were male, and creepy gays that are just so attracted to little boys that they want to become one, you know, so that their partner can have the next best thing, you know, a grown man who tries to look and act like a little boy. And so as they become associated with leftist adults, you know, and people like that, And guess who no longer wants to wear such things? Real little boys. You know what I'm saying? Because striped shirts and blue jeans and Converse become the uniform of the lesbian and, the effeminate gay. Like Tyler Robinson, or he wasn't the more effeminate one, but he was still gay. Because, as I've stated before, anytime you willingly and knowingly date a transgender, you are gay. So, I have a feeling they'll become a lot less popular, those shoes, because it will be understood that they're like the shoes of leftism and college kids that hate Trump. And so that's exactly what happens. It's like little boys and their parents sort of get away from things as they become more associated with those kinds of people. And so, I've just always liked the fact that, little boys, I guess I've said that word way too many times, they make it impossible to truly enforce, that women can't wear men's clothing or masculine clothing, because it has to exist, you know what I'm saying? It has to, because they have to make, now granted, I'm not that far below a man's size, unfortunately. I used to be able, I normally can wear this on my middle finger, but in the summertime, my hand swells so much I can wear it on my ring finger. Unfortunately, I'm not that far below a man's size in most things. But if I were, a little bitty petite Asian woman below 5 feet tall, wearing like a size 4 shoe, and wearing, a size 5 or below ring, even such women can wear male or masculine clothing thanks to little boys, and the fact that they have to make such things small enough for 11 and 12-year-olds all throughout their teens. And as a result, it is a lot harder to say that women cannot wear men's athletic socks with patriotic stripes, red or blue. It's a lot harder to say that than it would be to say that men cannot wear fishnet stockings and size 13 high heels. If you know what I mean. It's a lot easier for women to wear like Converse and athletic tube socks and, sports jerseys and blue jeans and, the things that are associated with boys and men. It's a lot harder to ban those things for women simply because of what I'm saying. The fact that we are the default gender. The fact that we are what everyone starts out looking like in utero. And to a lesser extent, after birth, as long as you don't see their genitals. We are the default, whether men like it or not. So, yeah, it's kind of good to be the default in that way, as much as I hate it. But, it just has given me a lifelong obsession with the voice change and every male, past, present, or future, that has ever gone through it or will go through it. And it's just so freaking fascinating to me, how you'll have some boys, that are barely even 12 or even under 12, going through it, like Daniel Radcliffe as Harry Potter. And then you'll have the other end of the spectrum, 16 and 17, still not finished changing, like Justin Bieber. Then you'll have the average, which is around like 13 and a half to 14. That's most boys. And it's like, I've just always felt envious because I see advantages to all three. If you're an early bloomer, and you're already sounding like a man at age 12, well, you get to be real popular with all the girls in junior high or middle school. And they're normally pretty good in sports. They're normally the jocks. If you're a late bloomer like Justin Bieber, you get to experience high school as a kid, so to speak. You get to have 17 Christmases where you wake up as a kid, per se, on Christmas morning. It's like your childhood doesn't end until you're legally ready to be an adult, so to speak. And you don't have your body maturing way ahead of your brain, like so many of us. And then if you're average, well, that's the best thing possible because you fit in the best. You know, you get to fit in, you get to be like most of the other kids. Like if your voice changes between 8th and 9th grade. So yeah, I mean, no matter how you look at it, you know, going through it at any age is better than not at all. Like me as a woman. And so yeah, video's gone on too long, but you know, that's what I did as far as, you know, making a pair of shoes for this doll who didn't have any that would fit him, and making Tinkerbell a dress of sort, even though it doesn't look like the character's dress. So yeah, I'll go ahead and post this video.